All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Thueson here with the AVA Movement Podcast. Today, I'm joined by guest Aaron Rubin.
That's me.
Yeah, that's Aaron. We got him. He's a longtime engineer and producer for Angels and Airwaves, and more recently was the engineer, co-producer, and co-writer for Blink-182's album One More Time. That album reached #1 on the Billboard 200 and sold over 125,000 copies in its first week, marking the triumphant return of Tom DeLonge. Aaron, a lot has changed since last time we spoke. Thanks for joining, and how are you doing? How's everything going?
I'm well. I have a preschool cold that I got from my daughter.
Yep, those are fun.
It might actually work out to everyone's benefit because I feel like my voice is about like 2 steps slower than usually.
Okay.
And I feel like it usually sounds 5 steps higher than what I hear in my head, which annoys the hell out of me.
Everyone hates their own voice. So just for the viewers, Aaron's not trying to seduce anyone. It's just a cold.
Okay. It happens though. It happens.
Yeah, don't blame them if it does.
Yeah.
I also have a preschooler, so it's not if they have a cold, it's how bad. It's just part of the deal.
No, they always have a cold. Like from 1.5 or 1 to like 4. And I usually have the most amazing what is it called?
Immune system.
There we go. You know that they've said, I've heard on the news that ever since COVID, people have been losing their memory, like being able to search for words.
Interesting. Yeah, weird side effect, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, we're here. We're healthy. So, Aaron, I'm going to skip the origin story, as I call it.
Okay.
The AVA movement is well-versed in the Rubin brothers and how they came to be with Tom and all of that. So I'll save you the 20-minute talk about how you met Tom and how that all came to be. So we'll jump right into the new album One More Time. The first question is, what drove kind of that decision to have Travis produce it to start, considering they had worked with like John Feldman on the last few albums? And was it always going to be like the two of you and Nick kind of co-producing, or did that just evolve like as the songs were developed?
Nick who?
Nick Long.
Oh.
He did a lot of like, at least he's credited on Wikipedia with a few of the co-producing songs.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think there was any ever set plans, period, for the record. Everything was going to be like a wait and see. So it was like, let's get together. Let's write some songs. Let's track them. Let's record them. See where we end up, like in a few months. And whatever we were doing was just kind of working. So there was never that conversation of, all right, we got to sit down and talk producers or this and that. It was just kind of flying by the seat of our own pants. Is that?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
That's okay. Good.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, I think what ended up happening was the guys would get together like every other week for a couple days, 2-3 days, get in the room, jam some stuff out, track some basic tracking, and then everybody would kind of go back to their own little studios and add to it or work on it or, save everybody else the time of like working things out while all three of them are there.
Sure. Yeah, that kind of segues into the next question a little bit, because this album was largely recorded in separate studios, kind of like neighborhoods. And what would you say about One More Time that makes it feel more cohesive? I'd say almost like it was recorded in one studio. Is it kind of have to do with like the technology since Neighborhoods, or is it more like the mindset of the band that we're saying like we're gonna make this a true Blink album rather than kind of like the AVA plus 44 tug of war that you hear a little bit in Neighborhoods? This feels like way more cohesive, even though it was recorded in a similar fashion.
Yeah, I think the cohesive vibe has more to do with the songwriting, where I feel like since probably Untitled, there was this kind of tug of war of, Tom still wanted to kind of like progress above and beyond Blink, and the only way he knew how to do it was through kind of his Angels and Airwaves vibe. He felt like that would elevate it. And same thing with, maybe Mark and Travis at that point. I wasn't super in the mix on the songwriting end of things, like on Dogs Eating Dogs, and definitely wasn't there for Neighborhoods. But I've always just thought from a fan perspective that it just kind of felt like plus 44, Angels and Airwaves, compilation, and that's that. But I think this time they went in with the intention of, we want to sound like the best version of Blink, period. So even though the songs are super different across the board, that Blink thing is still a constant string that runs through all of the songs, whether it's sonically or songwriting wise, riff wise. So that definitely helps. Travis's studio kind of was the main studio in terms of, drums and bass world. I think Mark did a good portion of his vocals there, especially towards we started working in January of 2022, and I think towards about, I don't know, August, September, I think Mark was just doing everything over at Travis's. So the only real difference studio wise was, Tom's situation, but you can't really get a studio vibe from guitars. Like you'll play it because everything's so close mic, especially in this genre. It's not like the studio brings some sort of mojo to guitars, and vocals are so you don't really want any of the studio mojo per se with vocals. Yeah. So I think in that sense, yeah, I think as far as cohesive, I would say it's the songwriting, not necessarily the studios.
Yeah, you mentioned that they started pretty early, like I think you said January of 22. Like to release Edging almost a year before the album, was that just a byproduct of timing and touring and writing and all that, or was that kind of they always wanted Edging to be that first release to kind of mark their reunion, and the rest of it would kind of come out after the first wave of the tour there?
Nobody knew that there was going to be a, which song was going to be like the lead off. It was just kind of like, I think they knew when they were going to be releasing, putting the tickets on sale, announcing the reunion and whatnot. And they knew that they had to have an album in by December, January, and that the tour was going to start in March. So it wasn't supposed to be a year. But,
Okay.
Is it Occam's razor? And everything that
That
will
one I
go
don't
bad
know.
goes bad.
Yeah, right. But yeah.
Oh God, I'm like losing it. I should probably just stick to basic
Someone fact
human
check
talking.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, shit happens,
Gotcha.
That's that.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
the album I mean, they were still on this part of the tour. The tour had started in the US and the album still wasn't done. Like it was out to mix, but then I think Travis came back from tour and redid a few things here and there.
Okay.
Um, and that's that. So it was just kind of like we chose the label actually chose Edging. Thought that that was like the one.
The radio hit.
Um, yeah, and it was one of those trust me moments from the label. So I mean, the guys were just kind of like, okay, cool. I mean,
What would you have picked?
at that point in time, um, I probably would have gone with More Than You'll Ever Know or More
Yeah.
Than You Know.
Yeah. More than you know. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
just
I
me.
agree. That
I felt like if you're gonna come back and you're gonna like put out music, it's got to be like more
punchy.
so for the fans than for, you know, oh, this will do great at radio, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm not in that world anymore, and
Sure.
I totally get it. And like I said, whatever song they felt was the strongest, um, cool. I mean,
Yeah.
they're all our babies, right?
Right. Right. So Travis mentioned in that Zane Lowe interview that he kind of would always tell himself, like, what would Jerry do in reference to Jerry Finn, the ex Blink producer.
Hmm.
But what would you say separates Travis from Jerry? Like, are there a few like trademark Travis producing things that you see in his songs? I know like drum and bass are always kind of in the forefront. I think when the album came out, people's first reaction was like how prevalent the drums were. Is there anything that you'd say like, oh, that's classic Travis as far as his producing techniques or styles?
Well, Travis as a producer has doesn't have the history um that, you know, it's not like he's got 20 years in the back pocket of
Sure.
producing. So I mean, so as far as like what is his style, I think it's evolving and he's growing in that producer um side of things. And I think his productions are definitely meant to be um probably more modern, I would say, than Jerry.
Mhm.
Um, but it's, you know, it's one of those things where it's just taste, and I feel like every album, no matter what, needs a quarterback calling the shots
Yeah.
and kind of having like the final say. And in this case, it was Travis, and you know, he was very open to the best ideas. Like he was always down to hear any
Sure.
idea I had, or you know, Tom had, or anybody in the band had.
Hmm.
But I think for him, it was a matter of finding the best ideas. You know, it's like let's,
Sure.
you know, which is a good kind of frame of mind, I think, when you're there.
Yeah.
But you know, it's kind of hard being a member of the band and being the drummer, and then having to separate yourself and put on a completely different hat
Right.
and view the song from a macro world. So I think he
Mhm.
was constantly dividing himself between like I'm Travis the drummer and then having to separate himself to be Travis the producer. And I think Travis the producer kind of was coming out more so towards the end when it was like, all
Mhm.
right, how is the song feeling? Like, what does it need? What's moving? What's not moving? And whatnot.
Sure.
But you know, it's cool.
Yeah, I was super excited when they said he was gonna produce it because I like I was a big fan of like what he did with some of the newer acts coming up, like on the MGK record or Kenny Hoopla or any of those, and just his team with him too, whether it's you know Kevin Thrasher or Nick is did how was working with those guys? Is it like different than I mean in the Angels world it's basically like you, Tom, and Alon. So was it different kind of having these other um, voices in the room that may be more used to that kind of modern style of music, this kind of new wave of pop punk, this new school style?
Um, not necessarily. I mean, Thrash was he's a great dude. Like he's a really good guy, and I have nothing but good things to say about him. I would say that yeah, having a process of like different people involved, especially when you have like organizational OCD like I do. Um, and I think it's like all engineers, like the way we see our sessions, the way we want our sessions to look, like everyone has their own particular vibe. So I think everybody kind of had to like let their guard down a little bit
Mm,
and have that trust, and communication was vital.
sure.
Like, hey, we're working on this today. That's like, okay, we're working on this. What are you going to get done from this batch of stuff that needs to get done? What do you need me to do? So I mean, we were all kind of just working like a team, and Thrash and I work great. I mean, we still chit chat, and it's what, six
Yeah.
months after the completion of the album,
Nice.
and
Yeah.
and it's good. I mean, I can't say other than like super organizational and engineering type stuff. That's all we kind of like had a hand in, or we'd be
Okay.
like, or like Thrash would be like, dude, that song like you guys just sent is awesome, or and
Hmm.
so I mean, he was like super into that, like just hearing stuff coming from us.
Sure.
So I
Um,
thought that was really cool.
yeah, sounds good. And like, hopefully that's maybe a team that is together for a while on the future Blink albums. There was, definitely a revitalization of pop punk. I feel like, especially with the younger generation kind of coming out of COVID.
Yeah.
I feel like it was largely in part due to Travis kind of working with some of those people that I mentioned before, like MGK or Kenny Hoopla, Youngblood. If that doesn't happen, do you think this Blink reunion still happens? It just feels like the perfect time to kind of come back while pop punk is in the forefront of music again.
Well, I don't think any of that played into Blink getting back together.
Okay,
I mean, Blink getting back together was pretty much revolving around Mark's situation
gotcha.
and the guy's relationship patching up on a friendship level,
Hmm.
and well, you have that song one more time.
Yeah,
That's pretty much
tells you
the
everything you
gist.
need to know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the gist of the whole thing. So I mean, it wouldn't have mattered what else was happening outside um the world
sure,
within those three guys. I think everything was based off of that, and they would have done that whether there was COVID, no COVID, a world war, no world war,
sure. Yeah.
and that's
Um,
that.
Yeah, interesting. So, s- speaking of Travis's long list of collaborators that he's had in the last few years, was there ever any discussion of like potential features on this album? Kind of felt like if there's ever a time to maybe have some of those people on a Blink track, it would be this album. Was there any discussion of that, or did that anything like that almost happen?
Uh, I don't think so.
No,
Not that I know of. Um, but yeah, I think the guys just wanted this album to be about Blink,
gotcha.
not necessarily having to bring anybody on board to either make them relevant, which they
Sure.
don't really need help with,
No.
or having friends on there, or I think it was just a matter of being very introspective. But again, that's what I know of the
Sure,
situation.
sure. And I think I saw was it Tim Armstrong got guitar credits on Fuckface, I believe, right? Did he record those guitars or was that Tom?
Uh, that would actually be, I think it was Tim.
Yeah.
The only thing I recorded on that song with Tom was Tom's vocals,
Okay.
which is kind of going back and forth with Travis, which actually on what I had, I believe it was Tim doing the vocal.
Oh, really?
Because I think the song kind of stemmed from like a 5-song hardcore thing that like Travis was putting together,
Mm.
and I don't know the backstory of like how the songs were written or whatnot.
Mhm.
But I think there was just that one song, and I think Travis was like, "Oh, it'd be so cool to have something like this on the Blink record." And I think he showed it to Tom, and Tom was like, "Yeah, that's awesome. Like,
Yeah.
let's do it. Let's put it on."
Nice. Um, so a lot of these tracks on One More Time, to me anyway, have kind of like a throwback vibe to different eras, whether that's Enema, Untitled, Dogs Eating Dogs, or even like some songs feel like they could fit on the California or Nine albums. Was there kind of like a cognizant effort in their writing during that to have certain things throw back to a certain time, or was that just kind of an organic product of these guys writing songs for the last 30 years, so some will sound like various albums of the past?
I I don't think they wanted to per se write, like, okay, we need our What's My Edge Again, we need a rock show, we need this and that.
Yeah.
I don't think that there was ever that thing. I think the three of them in a room together, being Blink is Blink.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter what kind of song they're playing, there's just this synergy between the three of them. From a production standpoint, um, I put the boundaries in my head and kind of kept that to the, kind of like I was kind of like the little angel on Tom's shoulder, kind of going like, let's not use a synth. Like, why we're not gonna, like, no, like, guitars. We can use
Yeah.
synths, but it should never be a focal point or a feature. Um, and even in a song like Blink Wave, it was very synth based,
Hmm.
but it still feels like Blink in a very cool way.
Sure.
Um, and in that sense, um, I still don't even think like synths pop out at you and go like, "Oh my god, this is like super synthy."
Yeah. No, I didn't. I agree. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that kind of I always said like I would want this to be like, what would the album right after Untitled sound like?
Yeah.
And that was kind of like my mindset throughout the whole thing. Now, obviously, it's not like I had control over
Sure.
everyone and everyone's situation, but I kind of feel like everybody in the back of their minds had that idea. Like, what would the natural progression after, had we not broken up, what would the natural progression be? And I
Right.
think that's where this kind of landed.
So no running around the studio, locking up all the delay pedals and to make sure it stays
We
blank.
actually didn't have any delay pedals because um we were moving from studio to studio.
Oh, nice.
And anytime there was a delay pedal, it's like, all right, like, mess with it. have
Sure.
at it. And then it'd be like, what do you think? I'm like, sounds like Angels. All
Yeah.
right, take it
Never mind.
off, pump up the distortion, let's do it. But
Maybe some
I
future
can't
Angels
tell you,
tracks then.
yeah, I can't tell you that even like happened more than 2 or 3 times in the
Okay.
entire span of a year.
It was pretty. Everyone was on the same page. Sounds like as far as the sound.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it, and I think that's what I think makes this album great is that everybody was on the same page in terms of what the intention behind this record needed to be. And the intention of the record is we three are Blink, and Blink are going to be Blink. We're not going to try to be something else, which I always think like, yeah, sometimes you have to go somewhere else to come back to know what made the thing you were in
Yeah.
what it was.
Yeah. Kind of like Untitled. Tom kind of stepped away, did his boxcar thing, and kind of getting that out of his system or whatever he needed to do
Yeah.
probably led to one of their greatest albums if you ask a lot of the fans. So it sounds like a similar thing here with Angel stuff. He got all his To the Star stuff out of his system, and he could kind of come back and make a true Blink record without feeling like he still had more to kind of give on that side of his artistic brain, I would say.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think more than anything, it was the relationship. The relationships were there.
mhm,
You know, like they would call each other and just chat and
sure.
joke around, you know, out of the blue, or send weird texts to each other
Yeah.
that were funny. And
Only
you know that,
imagine.
yeah, that whole thing was like it kind of moves the process in the right direction and keeps things
Hmm.
cool. Everybody kind of like check their ego at the door, and
Yeah.
you know, what with age that also kind of comes as well. You know,
Yeah. Great point. Um, so is it safe to assume on this album that whoever was kind of like the lead vocal wrote that song, or are there any examples where someone else is singing the lead, maybe due to a better suited like cadence of delivery, octave, or how they kind of sing the lyrics, or is it pretty straightforward? Like if Tom's the lead, he wrote it. Mark's the lead, he likely wrote it.
the only song that I could think of is More Than You Know,
Hmm.
where originally Tom had laid down the verse vocals, and it kind of just it didn't feel right because of maybe it was just like the key of the song kind of felt too low for him.
Mm,
And so Mark ended up writing some words and singing the verses, and it worked out great because you have that great dichotomy between those two vocalists. They're complete opposites.
yeah,
And so you have this kind of like verse that cruises, and then you have this bombastic pre-chorus that comes in with Tom at the top of his lungs, kind of doing Tom,
yeah,
and then it goes into this super driving chorus. But I think in most for the most part, I think whoever kind of like wrote the song was kind of like feeling things out, but then would also leave space for, if Mark wrote something, he'd leave a little bit of space for Tom. Tom wrote something, he'd leave a little bit of space
sure,
for Mark. Whether it was like, all right, we're gonna trade off lines, or you know, Mark's got the pre-chorus, we both come in at the chorus, you know, second verse goes to Mark, like in
Mhm.
Edging.
Sure.
And what other song did that happen in?
Oh, one more
Good
time, but
question.
I'm guessing
Oh,
those were probably
when we were
written,
young,
those verses.
Mark does verse 2,
Okay.
and Tom does first verse. So yeah, I think that, they kind of just had that thing in mind. I mean, you have two vocalists. It's like, how do you
Yeah.
use that to your advantage?
Yeah, I think that's always one of the things that separates from the, you know, non-Tom albums is the dichotomy between their voices is so real, like present in their albums, which makes Blink Blink. So yeah, when you take that
Yep.
away, it gets kind of washed out a little bit. Um, how many total songs were brought to the table during recording? And are there any songs or sounds or like aesthetics that maybe the fans would be shocked to hear that they were kind of experimenting with?
Can you repeat that question? You cut out
Oh,
very
sorry.
shortly.
How many total songs were brought to the table during recording? And were any of those that didn't make it, were there any sounds or aesthetics within those songs that people would be kind of shocked to hear that they were maybe experimenting with?
Hmm. No, I don't think that there would be any like shock per se.
Yeah,
Um, and there are songs that are done that may come out later or not. I honestly am not involved
sure.
on the business aspect
Sure. Yeah.
side of things. But um, yeah, it's not so much that it would be different or weird or unusual. It's just another cool Blink song.
Okay.
And there's some good ones that are still in the pocket. So I'm assuming that there may be something
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. I wasn't sure how experimental people are getting their busting out the sitar or something weird like that, but doesn't sound like it.
No, no, nothing in that world.
Okay.
Tom did want to, he'd always be playing this like almost like folky guitar acoustic thing.
Hmm.
And I, it just
Didn't fit.
never got written, but you never know.
Yeah. It's would be interesting to hear. Um, So what was the most fun? I'll say like what was the most fun song to work with, and I'll say why was it Blink Wave? Because that sounds like that would have been the most fun song to work with. And you know the kind of throwback we talked about this earlier about those '80s kind of throwback synths seem to have. I like as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, Aaron definitely was a part of this one because it kind of ties back to some of the songs on like Life Forms, and I feel like you've really kind of found a sweet spot when making those types of songs. Was that song in particular for you just a fun one to work on with the sound and trying to get that right?
It was a really weird thing because for that song, Tom had invited Mark down to the studio down in San Diego. So Mark comes down to the studio, and the first thing Tom says, like, "All right, cool, let's do like a synthwave song, like an '80s like
Yeah.
vibe synth." And I'm just kind of like, "What? Why? Why are we doing like that?" And I think like Tom just kind of wanted to like show me off, like, dude, Aaron's rad at this stuff, blah blah blah. And I'm just
Yeah.
kind of like, yeah, but I'm in like Blink world right now, like. But that one was fun to write, just because at that point we had somebody else in the room. It wasn't send the
Just do it. Yeah.
song and somebody said, "Oh, dude, everything's rad. Like, check out this idea for a pre-chorus." So, I mean, it came up like super organically. Like, it was just kind of like, all right, we knew that we wanted kind of like the synth bass sound. So I was like, throw me a progression. And Mark's just like, all right, what do you think about this? Played something on bass. I'm just like, boom, 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 boom. Plugged it all in, got it going, put like a very like standard, four on the floor kind of beat.
Hmm.
And then gave Tom a guitar and was like, all right, you know, write something for that. And then like the next part kind of came it very organically. Everything was super organically, but it was just kind of like, since everything was kind of in the synth and like drum machine world, it was like translating, whatever we were playing on guitars into what would sound good on those things. And then it would be like, all right, we're gonna eat lunch. Like, why don't you go do some like cool shit, like synthwise? And I'm like, all right, let's.
Aaron, make this cool.
I'm like, it could go so many ways. It can always go so many ways. And it's not about me. Like, I didn't want to necessarily be like, I did this, I did that.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, I want this to kind of be a collaborative thing. Whereas with Angels, it's, it's like this partnership of ideas between Tom, Ilan, and I, in the studio. And a lot of the times, Ilan's like, don't send me anything until you guys are happy with what you have. Like, I don't want to like work on something,
Start over.
and then have to like be married to something that is going to end up getting changed 100 times.
Yeah.
So that, there's that difference. But in all honesty, the funnest song for me was Anthem Part 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, to me, was like, Tom and I in a room and just like reminiscing over like all the different like punk bands, it's like,
Yeah.
it's like he's like, I've never really done like a harmony octave. And he starts playing this octave. I'm like, God, that sounds like Lagwagon or like No Use for a Name. He's like, it does, huh? And it's like, going, take things back 30 years almost.
Yeah. I love at the end too. It feels like it's wrapping up, and then you get that last portion, and that's maybe the coolest part of the song. It's like kind of towards the end there when it just all feels like it comes together. So yeah, definitely. First time I heard that, I was like, "Wow, this is crazy! Like, what a great intro song to start with."
Yeah, I mean, that was the whole like Anthem Part 3 situation kind of started when like Tom had the riff, and like as a joke I like put in these like drum fills that were like dun dun dun.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there you go, Anthem Part 3. Because the working title, like right when we started it, because I was, I have to come up with the title with the name stuff, and it was like, what are we gonna name this one? And he's like, I don't know. I was like, all right, this one's called Vegetarian. And it was like, haha, but like literally by halfway through the thing, he's like, all right, Anthem Part 3. And yeah, it was just super organic and fun. And the structure of the song is way different than most of the other songs. There's like an intro 1, an intro 2, but it doesn't feel like don't bore us, get to the chorus kind of. It's just kind of like this cool adventure, and it gets you in a good mindset, I think, for the rest of the record. And then that outro thing, I just kept on hearing like this like beat, and I was just like, what if it was like this song? And I always forget what song it is from Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. Every Time You Look for Me.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The sun goes down.
Yep.
That bridge where it just kind of goes into that like kind of like super
slows
halftime
it down
stuff
a
thing.
little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of kept on hearing that somehow with these chords, and I'm just like, Tom, hear me out. Like, what if we just did like this big outro and like never go back to like the chorus? He's like, I think it's just cool up to that chorus. I'm like, just follow me down the path. And I think that kind of became like both of our favorite part of the song.
Yeah,
Is that ending?
it's like takes a song from great to like epic for me too. Like the first time I heard it, like I said, I thought it was kind of winding down. Like that's a great song. And then that outro kicks, and it was like one of those where I was like, okay, this is different level stuff. There's just like you said, it makes you super excited for the rest of it. Um, it actually ties into, since we're talking about Anthem Part 3, we'll get to the fan questions later, but a lot of people ask if that riff is the old AVA, the Angels demo that Tom posted like back in 2020 of March, I think I saw. You may not know if it is or not, but did that come from a
No,
Angels demo? No, completely
no,
different. Sounds pretty
but
similar, but yeah,
well, it's Tom.
sure,
Tom.
yeah,
I mean, I can sit there and take 5 songs that are a Blink song, an Angel song, a Boxcar song,
yeah.
and, and like you have like this pile of songs that all kind of like in a Venn diagram like fit in this middle. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, it's not the chord progression may have been somewhat similar, and
Sure.
obviously the tempo and drum beat was similar, but it wasn't like, let's go back to that one song
Okay.
that we never did. And because you guys never heard the vocals to that, I don't think
Hmm.
like in the little snippet that he posted it had
Yeah, I think
vocals.
there's something about like I saw the future, it's full of potential or something like that. And then
Yeah,
um
and it was completely, yeah,
okay.
and that had changed. I don't know. I know why that song never got finished.
People are like dying for that to come out, just so you know. Like if that was ever if you guys ever put something for Angels together as a non-release, like people would kill for that song based on what they heard.
All right.
But
Well, now
yeah,
noted.
all
But see,
right.
now they're gonna say,
Where
oh
is it? Where is it?
no, now they're gonna say, oh well, that's just a rip off of Anthem Part
Oh, yeah,
3.
right. Right.
So I don't know. I think everyone's head is in Blink right now.
Sure.
That's not to say that there's not gonna be Angels and Airwaves. I
Mm,
just think that it's time to celebrate Blink right now and
sure.
kind of be in
Yeah.
that world. And what happens in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, we'll
Yeah,
see.
who knows?
Tom's always going to be doing other things, whether it's, you know,
Movies,
hunting
the stars.
UFOs, making
Yeah,
movies. So there could be a re-emergence of, a single for a movie or something, or who
sure.
knows.
So Terrified was, I would say, maybe the most anticipated track, given that it was originally written for Boxcar Racer song, and when that got out, people were just super excited to hear it. So, how different was the version that made it onto One More Time than the original Boxcar song? And was that written like back in the Boxcar days, or was that later on as kind of like just kicking around a potential Boxcar album later?
The origin story of that song was in about 2018. I think there was going to be like it would probably be what, 15-year anniversary. It wouldn't be
Yeah,
10-year for Boxcar.
2001. Yeah, 10 years, right?
What?
It wasn't, no, it was after 2000. So, yeah.
I,
No.
I think it would have been like 15-year
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
something.
15. You're right. Yep.
15-year anniversary of the Boxcar thing. And I think just hearing 15 years, Tom was just like, huh, maybe it'd be cool to do like a Boxcar tour. Or maybe it'd be cool to do an EP and then maybe do like a festival or something. So he ended up just kind of like writing. He's like, let's write a Boxcar song. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, put on my Boxcar hat,
Yeah,
you
right.
know, and
So-
we kind of got this track, and then Tom had sent it over to Travis, and Travis loved it. Sent him over the session, and he sent back a version of it that left out a whole like Angels type intro that Tom had put. And when I'm like, okay, great. But then the rest of the song was just pretty much almost verbatim as to what you hear there. The only difference was that we never got to a bridge
Okay.
in 2018. So when Travis had brought the idea up to Mark and Tom was like, "Yeah, I mean, I'm cool with it if you guys are all cool with it." And I guess Mark heard the song and he was like, "Yeah, cool." So the only thing that really needed to happen was the bridge, and that actually came up in Tom and I worked on a bridge, and it was completely different than what Travis had come up with. But I think in the end, I think Travis's bridge was the right move,
Okay.
which is you'll never hear it come out of my mouth. I'll always be like, my idea was the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it just was.
I mean, that was maybe the one part that didn't sound totally like Boxcar, right? Like that would have
Yeah,
much
and
so been like a modern Boxcar song, not like something you'd hear on their one album.
right, and that in my head was like, okay, what would have been on that record
Mm-hmm.
then?
That would not
But
have. Yeah.
but in the end, it's like it's a really cool moment on the record.
Mm-hmm.
It fits with what's there, and it's completely left of center, which was kind of like that thought process during Boxcar. It's like just when you
Yeah.
think we're gonna make a right, we're gonna make a left. You know, just when you think
Sure.
we're gonna go to this chord, we're gonna go to an absolutely just call out a chord out of our back pocket, and that's the chord we're going to. And it's like, okay, so I thought it was successful in that perspective. It's you're taking a completely different turn for the unexpected.
Yeah. I mean, outside of that bridge, I would have thought it was written back in 2004, whatever that was. So great job replicating. It sounds straight like it could definitely live on the their album. So
Yeah.
um, so the Hurt interlude is kind of the one song that feels like super Angels and Airwaves. Um, I guess another kind of to repeat the question is, was that like a song that was reworked for an Angel song? And also like what was Mark and Travis's reaction to kind of having that on the album, given the overall kind of spirit to keep it like a Blink album as much as possible? It felt like that one kind of was fairly heavily influenced by like an Angels vibe.
So here's the funny thing. I had no idea that that song was going to be on the record
Oh wow.
because that song was a song that was written um one day, and it was almost like a hardcore song.
Mm.
And it was called Damaged Eyes. So we did one version of it that was kind of like that, like hardcore. Tom's vocals were like super, like, almost like Hetfield, James Hetfield in
Yeah,
a way.
like gravelly.
I was like, whoa, where'd that come from? Um, but what ended up sticking was the chorus. Um, so it was that chorus melody. And then I think Travis was, I think, the biggest proponent of that song. He's like, I think this is so cool. This would be like a really cool interlude if we just did like this, like down tempo, like put some delay guitars on there, like make it super vibey. And it got done. And I was like, okay. It really must have been put together like super quick because I think the only thing that was, like I said, I didn't even know it was going to be on there.
Huh, wow. I would
So,
have
and
thought that was. straight out of your archives or something Tom brought to the table?
No, I mean vocally. I mean, but see, that's the thing. It's like you can take any song that Tom's done for Angels, with the exception of probably stuff on the Dreamwalker. But there are some songs on the Dreamwalker that could have been Blink songs. But
Sure.
any song that like Tom ever wrote um for Angels, and just kind of make it a Blink song by just taking the delays off and playing the riffs a little bit different, and
Yeah.
maybe changing the
Take the
tempo.
intros out.
Yeah. And you take all that weird stuff out, or I won't say
Cool
weird, but
stuff. Yeah.
the nuanced,
I got you.
ethereal vibes, and
Mhm.
you can turn it into that. And I think conversely, you can take Blink songs and you can make them Angel songs if you wanted to.
Mhm.
They are written by the same person, so the actual like core of the song doesn't change. It's just the kind of like gift wrap.
Sure.
The song is the present. What are we going to wrap the gift in?
Yeah.
And that's,
Seasoning.
yeah.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. I think all of us were like, "Oh, that must have been an old Angel song," but yeah. So probably the other biggest fan favorite is Turpentine or Turpentine, however you want to say it. The whole like back and forth with the pronunciation of the word and kind of the joke at the end, was that like ad libbed, or was that kind of something that he, is when he wrote it, knew he kind of wanted to make a play on how to pronounce that and kind of take that in a different way?
It was one of those things where it was turpentine, turpentine, turpentine. And I think at some point we started like going back and forth. And I remember there was a phone call with Mark, and Mark was like, "No, it's actually turpentine." He's like, "Turpentine? Turpent So should I sing it turpentine?" He's like, "No, sing it turpentine because it just sounds good." And so we just added that thing at the end because it was just funny.
Yeah, just calling out, yes, we know it could be either one.
Yeah, there
Funny.
was that like back and forth of like, all right, what do we do? Because the song is really cool and turpentine works, and then we're
Yeah.
rhyming stuff with turpentine, turpentine. Does it ever say turpentine besides the end?
I think it's just at the end. Um, yeah, I was listening to it the other day to see if it actually does go back and forth, and I'm fairly certain it's all
Turpentine.
turpentine. Yeah, you
Yeah,
can't rhyme turpentine with Ovaltine, right?
that's right.
Another classic Tom line mixed in there.
Hmm.
Just people hear that, they might or may not. Um,
Yes.
so you kind of touched on it before, but do you have any gauge on what a Blink reunion means for Angels and Airwaves? And some of the other things that were in the works. I'm sure you get plenty of DMs about the live album, or even like the documentary and all that stuff that was kind of in the works but never saw the light of day. I guess, do you think Blink and AVA can coexist in some world?
Um, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's not, it's just that I don't know. Can it? I'm sure it can, but that just depends on, does Tom want to go out on tour during his time off from Blink,
Yeah.
or write stuff, or does he want to use Angels and Airwaves as a different kind of vehicle that maybe supports film side of things?
Sure.
Now, I haven't had this conversation with Tom, so I'm just kind of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
speculating
Sure.
as, what it can be. There is a live album that is finished, mastered, done. When it will come out, I don't know. and
Okay.
that probably has to do more with timing of Blink, their album cycle,
Sure.
and other stuff. But it's really good. If you went to
Yeah.
any of, I mean, it's literally, there were probably every show was recorded on that last Angels tour. So
Okay. The
I
last
had,
that second leg.
yeah, so I
Yeah.
had the horrible job of having to kind of listen through and figure out like which version from what city was the best version of each song.
Sure.
Um, so it's not like, all right, we're gonna record this show and
Yeah, it's not
that's
one
that.
show.
No, and it was also picking out banter in between the songs from each show that kind of made it feel like it was one cohesive show,
Sure.
but you know, we just had to kind of like pick and choose what worked. And
Kind of like the Tom Mark Travis shows, like
yeah,
pieced together. Yeah.
yeah, it was more like of an after the fact because everything sounded the same. It was all recorded exactly the
Mhm.
same. And because the only thing that was really mic'd were Tom's vocals, which is obviously the same mic going through the same mic pre's compressors, everything every night. Annie Lon's drums, all the guitars were the Axe effects, and same thing with bass. Everything was the same every night. It was just more of a matter of trying to find the best
Yeah.
performances and what felt good. And I would kind of like keep in touch with the band, like, hey, what song do you guys feel like was great yesterday?
Yeah.
And maybe make a note of it as things went by on the tour, just kind of save myself hours and hours and hours of listening to stuff.
Yeah. You tell me what was best. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
But
can tell
then
you from
again, you never know in the moment. Like you might think like,
sure.
"Oh my god, that was awesome," but maybe you were just super drunk and we're having a
Yeah.
great time and it just felt great, but you then go listen to
You're
the
like, oh, what
tapes
was
and
that?
you're like, "Whoa."
Or the crowd was drunk, so their reaction was like off the charts, and
Yeah.
for some reason they're just feeling that.
Yeah.
Um, well, I can tell you if there was one thing from the fans' perspective that I hear is live album, live album, live album. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? So, yeah, this will be even more of a tease, knowing that it's all done and it sounds great, and it's just a matter of when to release it. But we will be anxiously waiting.
It was done over a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you know about the documentary too? Like, is that
I
done
have
or?
no idea
All
about
right.
the documentary. All I ever knew is that Peter McKinnon would just show up
Yeah. So he did like
randomly.
interviews and stuff at
Yeah,
the
and
practice studio, and
he did interviews there. He'd pop in one day and it's like, "Oh, Peter's here."
yeah,
And he'd just be hanging out at the studio or be out on tour and, "Hey, Peter's here."
just
It's
like in a
like,
corner, like
yeah, he'd just kind of like pop in and out, but I honestly have no, I don't even think the band knows or Tom knows like what the deal. It's all kind of like in Peter's world, and
okay.
I don't know. Maybe at
We'll
some point.
try to stop messaging you about it. Maybe you can DM
Yeah,
Peter.
yeah. Anything that has to do with documentaries,
All right,
Peter
noted.
McKinnon.
Um, so yeah, we're gonna just take a couple questions from the fans now. We kind of asked if there are any specifics out there. So this comes from the Rhymer username. What's next for Blink sound wise? Did the guys talk about how they want to take the band's progression going forward, or are they just kind of living in the moment right now?
Living in the moment.
Yeah,
Everything's been like whatever makes sense right now.
sure.
Um, I don't know if they're they've talked about certain things while they're on the road. Because I haven't been on the road. Like I literally
Sure.
went to the shows that were kind of in like San Diego and LA, and those are always shit shows because it's just everybody's like family, friends, like, so it's not like you're sitting there hanging out, chit chatting like you would in St. Louis.
Minneapolis.
Yeah,
That's right.
Minneapolis. Yeah. But as far as I know, I think everything's kind of just about the present and whatever they're kind of feeling, whatever ideas they're kind of like feeling. It's kind of hard to sit there and like make plans
Sure. Like next, we're
when,
gonna dabble
yeah,
into. Yeah. Okay.
I think it's just like, let's just do what feels right, right then and
Fair.
right here, right now.
Makes sense. Next question comes from Kane Baker. He's wondering, what is your favorite song off the Untitled album, Aaron?
Off the Untitled album.
Yeah, or maybe even just your favorite Blink song that you weren't a part of.
I think off of Untitled, I want to say probably Violence or Stockholm Syndrome. I think those were the ones that jumped out at me when I had gotten the record.
Mm-hmm.
And All of Me, I thought was like amazing.
Yeah, no, those are, yep, all great. I agree. Can't go wrong with much on that album, honestly. Um, so we had one from Jules, 1996. They were asking about that one demo that everyone keeps asking about. So we already talked about that. Just shout out Jules for that question. And Andrew Flesh also asked about possible new AVA album, which we already touched on. But shout out Andrew for submitting. Yeah, and that Dylan X182 will live album ever be released along with documentary. So yeah, I think fans are super curious about that. So thank you for at least giving us hope that the live album is completed and it's a real live living thing. So
Yeah, so now you guys get to sit there and be like, when's that coming out? When's that
yeah,
coming out?
now we're
Any,
even more.
hey, Aaron, any news on that live album?
Oh, you'll be the first to.
Yeah, I'll probably find out when you guys find out. How's
Right,
that?
right. He'll just release it one day.
I'll just be like, oh, this came out. So,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, I was
that's
just
all
gonna
I
say.
had. I just had
So,
a very uplifting, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, you guys are all screwed until further notice, right? Um, so lastly, if you could just pick one track off this album one more time that kind of encompasses like the overall goal of what the band and yourself and everyone involved was trying to accomplish, could you like pick one song that, like if someone asked you, hey, what's the overall like message or vibe of One More Time to play me with one song?
I think lyrically and thematically, it would probably be One More Time.
Yeah.
Um, I think that sums up more than anything where, you know, where everyone's head was. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, we're friends, we're brothers, we're been through. I mean, you have to think about this ride of a lifetime, like that
Oh yeah.
these three guys who were just like regular, average, like suburban kids,
Yeah.
like um turn into this like global sensation that really I think hit people like deeply. And I think this kind of goes back to I was having this conversation with Tom because Tom was just like, how is this Strat selling so well? Like, why do, like, I'm not Eddie Van Halen. Like, I'm not this, like, great guitar player. And I'm like, yeah, I think you were, in my mind, I'm like, okay, nostalgia, 100%. That's one thing. But I think a lot of people, in a very odd way, and this is not to rag on Tom, but I think Tom was able to get so many people into playing guitars
Huh?
because the stuff that he wrote was not impossible to play. And
100%.
and even if you were a shredder for whatever reason, like those songs were fun to play. You
Yeah.
know, so he was kind of like the everyman's guitar hero, like, but he was like, you know, Bowser at the end of Mario. You know, you can beat him, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
but he's like the big guy. Like he kind of feels like you can beat him, but you kind of feel like you're on a level with them and you've kind of grown with them, especially like if you've been a fan, you know, from the beginning and you've seen that ride, or even if you got into them way later and have just kind of like gone through the whole catalog of music, like it's very relatable music. Like all of those songs, you've been there at some point in your life,
yep,
you know.
yeah.
Um,
Totally agree.
sonically, what song is like the song, or musically? I don't know. I think that this is one of those albums where there isn't one song musically that defines it. I think that's also kind of like the beauty of the Untitled record.
Mhm.
You know, there's some people say I Miss You is like the one. Some people say Feeling This is the one off of that.
Completely
Some people,
different.
you know, it's just like people always ask me like, "What's your favorite song off the record?" And it's like depends what day it is and how I'm
Yeah.
feeling. There's certain songs that hit on some days and certain songs that don't hit on other days.
Yeah, even like the videos too. I feel like if I'm watching one more time with the video, a much different
Yeah,
experience than like if I'm in the car with the kid and all that stuff. Like I can't get like into it, you know. And then if you're
yeah.
watching the video, you're like, oh man, this hits different when I'm watching this. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that video, like I saw it when everybody else saw it. I had no idea what was
Mm,
gonna happen, and I kind of like did like this like family thing like right before school. Like,
mm.
all right, this video came out as a family. We got to get to school in 15 minutes, so let's quickly watch this video. And like we all sat around at like 7:35 in the morning
It's like, damn.
and watched the video, and I was like, wow, like that video is so cool. And it
Yeah.
was, you know, especially if you're a fan and you're sitting there watching and
Yeah.
you know all those kind of
Sure.
visuals, you're like, that's so cool.
And if you know what they've been through in the last 15
Of
years or
course.
whatever, like it, if you don't know that, maybe it doesn't hit the same. But yeah, man, I just was gonna tell you, I've been a fan since '97 of these guys, and this album is right up there for me. My to your point, my first song I learned on guitar was "Damn It." That's like
Yeah.
I think a lot of us learned that first. Broke up with girls because of Blink songs. Went to college because of Blink songs. All that stuff. So as you said, it kind of followed my life as they wrote each album. And so, great job on this one. You guys just absolutely nailed it. I'm super excited to see what you guys do next. And just from an old school fan, I definitely appreciate this album. It's right up there with the others for me. So, great
I
job.
I am very happy to hear that. And when people do say that, it's super humbling, not just for me. Like it's not like I had so much to do with it, but
Mhm.
it was those three guys doing what they do and enjoying their situation, and they weren't trying to be anything else but themselves. So I think that them being genuine is what emanated from the record, and I'll say that from a fan perspective, even if I had nothing to do with the record.
Sure.
Like you know, um, my job is, you know, to make sure that all the guitars sound excellent, that vocals sound excellent, and for a good portion of the songs that the songs were great. But I mean, it was those three guys doing what those three guys do, and that I think that's what makes this album special, and why I think it can sit up there with the big records of back then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Aaron. That's all I got for you. Again, we always appreciate you joining with us over here at the AVA Movement. We're
As you
huge fans of
should.
both. Yeah, yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
We're definitely fans of both Angels and Blink. We grew up on Blink and kind of hit with Angels as we got older and more mature. So it's great to kind of have both to get us through life. So thanks again. Appreciate
Isn't
it.
it though? It's
And
great. You get
yeah,
just when you start getting sick of Angels, you get Blank, and then when
yeah.
you start getting sick of Blank, you get Angels, and
Yep. I would never wish, as much as I love Blink, I would never wish Angels never happened because I don't, that's such a key part of my life too. So,
yeah, no regrets. I think it's one of those things where you've been able to grow with Tom DeLonge musically
yep.
and been on his adventure.
Yeah. Hey,
You know?
there you go. Nice tie-in. All right,
Yeah,
man. Thanks again. I appreciate it. And hopefully next album or sooner we'll chat again. Thanks, Aaron.
sure. All right.